Island Line. I'm your host, Annika O'Melia, and today I sit down with Dr. Sharon Williams, Superintendent of Rock Island Milan School District 41. With decades of experience in education and leadership, Dr. Williams brings passion, innovation, and a deep commitment to student success to her work in Rock Island. On the show today, we discuss Dr. Williams' journey to Rock Island and what drew her to the district, the unique strengths and challenges of Rock Island Milan schools, her perspective on integrating AI into education, the district's approach to cell phone bans in schools, strategies for addressing disciplinary concerns in ways that foster growth, and her vision for the future of facilities, teaching, and learning. This is a thoughtful conversation about what it means to lead a diverse, dynamic school district in today's changing educational landscape. If you're enjoying Rock Island Line, please consider heading over to our website at rockislandline.com to learn more about what we're doing. And if you like the podcast, please subscribe and give it a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. And now, my conversation with Dr. Sharon Williams. So I'm here today with Dr. Sharon Williams, who's the superintendent of the Rock Island Milan School District, and welcome to the Rock Island Line.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I was really excited when you said, sure, I'll come on the podcast.
Of course. I love talking about my new home, Rock Island, and our school district.
I love that. I feel like sometimes figures like yourself in the community can seem unattainable or something. So I was super jazzed that you were willing to allow our community to get to know you better and hear more about what's going on in the Rock Island Milan School District.
I appreciate the invitation. Always glad to talk.
So how did Rock Island first pop up on your radar?
Yes, so Rock Island Milan School District, of course, was looking for a new superintendent, and I had on my radar for several years now going into the superintendency, and so I wanted to stay in Illinois. I was in the west suburbs of Chicago at the time, and Rock Island kind of popped up in my search, and I was really intrigued by the school district, wanted to get to a unit school district, a pre-K through 12 school district, and I really found it interesting, especially the demography of the city and the school district, and it just seemed like the perfect first superintendency for me.
Well, we feel very lucky to have you, and reading through your bio, you're a Fulbright scholar, you have a PhD in, did you just get a PhD in education or a specific type of education? Or?
Yes, so educational leadership, and it's an EDD. That's kind of the practitioner's doctorate in education and in educational leadership from Tennessee State University in my home, Nashville.
So as you rolled, you probably drove either 80 or 88 into the Quad Cities,
yes,
into Rock Island. What were your first impressions of our city?
I was so surprised about the rolling hills and just the physical beauty of the place. Living in the west suburbs of Chicago, it's all flat, not many hills, not as many trees and lush greenery, and I really appreciated that when I first came over. I really liked the historic nature of the buildings and neighborhoods and was able to get around pretty easily, so I really liked that when I first drove up. I think it was 88 probably.
And you could tell we're an old city. We're the oldest of the Quad Cities, I think.
Yes.
And
so I really did notice, I really appreciate historic buildings, older homes. So one of the first neighborhoods I was driving around, because the administration building is right across the street from the Broadway area. So just noticed the historic nature of the Victorian homes and thought this is very quaint and nice, and really looked forward to looking at other neighborhoods in the city as well.
Those are beautiful homes. I've in doing this work found some that I hope to highlight, some different Instagram kind of social media people who are fixing up Broadway homes and doing show and tell, so to speak. And it's so fascinating to watch people kind of rehab those old houses. They're so cool.
Yes,
yeah.
Very nice.
And so you came, and how many times does a superintendent visit a community before deciding, I think I can live here, I think this could be a home for me?
Well, I did a lot of research before I even applied to the job. So Part of that research was just finding anything I could on the internet about Rock Island and the Milan area, about the school district, watched a lot of school board meetings before applying. During the interview process, it was multi-stage. So the first interview was just kind of a meet and greet with the search firm. And then I had 2 subsequent interviews. So I visited at least 3 times before actually being offered the position. So I had an opportunity to look around the area for sure, get to know some of the neighborhoods during that time.
And when did you officially move here and make this home?
So I was hired by the Board of Education in January and was able actually to spend some time between January and June getting to know the school district, getting to know the area. So our school board really wanted me to have a good entry. So I came back every month from January to June before I started the job, usually over a 2 or 3 day period of time, talking to people in the school district, trying to find a home in the area as well. I finally settled around May is when I became the incoming superintendent. So the board was also very thoughtful about having the interim superintendent there with me for an entire month, which was very helpful in the transition process. So it was around late April, May when I first finally settled in the area.
Did anyone, as you were approaching moving here, talk to you about Rock Island, how it fits into the Quad Cities uniquely among the kind of picture of each city? Or because they knew you were coming here to be the superintendent, they kind of left you alone and
Well, I think they did talk to me about the Quad Cities. I was interested in knowing how Rock Island fit into the Quad Cities. As superintendent, I am required to live within the city boundaries, which was great for me because I like to be close to where I work and live. And really, the real estate professionals that I spoke with understood that parameter, so they really helped me find something that was going to be comfortable for me.
Wonderful. There's so much to talk about in education.
Yes.
I don't kind of even know where to start. But for people who are listening who live in Rock Island, can you give us an overview of our district, maybe in terms of numbers or kind of the current state of the Rock Island Milan School District?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we're a pre-K through 12th grade school district. We have early childhood programs all the way up to our senior high school. Right now we've been averaging about 6,200 scholars per year. And out of that 6,200 scholars, we have a free and reduced rate percentage of about 60%. And what that means is that about 60% of our scholars qualify for free or reduced breakfast and lunch. We are a CEP district, a community eligibility program district, which means all of our students eat free breakfast and free lunch. And that, I think, is a very strong aspect of our educational program for our school district. We are a very diverse school district, one of the most diverse school districts in the state of Illinois. We have about 15%, 14% of our scholars who are English learners. So that could range from a child that was born in the United States, but perhaps their parents speak another language at home, to recent immigrants and migrants. We have a very strong partnership with World Relief in the area, and they do resettle many families within the Rock Island bounds. And Rock Island Milan School District is a preferred school district for World Relief to introduce new families to our community. We're also very racially diverse. We have about 34% of our scholars who are African American, about the same 34 who are white or Caucasian, about 7% Asian, about 15% Hispanic. So a very broad racial diversity. And along with our English learners, we have about 22 plus languages that are spoken within our school district. So it is extremely diverse, rich cultural diversity, ethnic diversity, et cetera. It's just a very unique, I think, school district in our state.
What is wonderful and great about that? Like, why is that for people looking for a school district I don't know if selling point is the right term, but you don't find that everywhere. Maybe we're similar to our sister cities or not. I'm not sure on what their statistics are. But what about the Rock Island schools in that uniqueness do you think is attractive to parents looking to find a school system, move to the Quad Cities? Why should they want to be in such a diverse environment?
Well, I think one, it definitely gives you a new perspective on your friends and neighbors. We see scholars kindergarten through, in our elementary schools, kindergarten through sixth grade, being able to really learn side by side with individuals that maybe they would never meet in their educational experience. So it's really important, I think, for our scholars to understand to be more globally minded as well. So learning about their classmates who have perhaps migrated here from another area, another country, perhaps has a different experience in moving to the United States, moving to Rock Island. I think that perspective is invaluable for our scholars. As you know, we're more globally minded these days. The space between countries is closer because we can get on our phone and be in another place very easily. And I think having that close interaction with scholars who are different from you is a very important experience for our scholars.
So students from every background better being able to navigate the global majority of everybody is kind of different on a global level.
Yes.
And so going out into leadership positions and working in a world where this isn't their first encounter with someone who is very different than themselves.
Yes. Has a different language background, has a different way of seeing the world, basically. And I think that's an invaluable skill, not something that many scholars in Illinois, in most public school systems, have. We do have a rich diversity in the Quad Cities in our school districts, and I think Rock Island is probably the most diverse of the cities in the Quad Cities.
I imagine it also comes with a certain set of challenges that if you are in a more homogenous district, you can tailor curriculum or interventions or teaching and learning to a more standard profile.
Yes.
And I'm sure that also comes with challenges for educators, administrators to say, okay, how do we take all these different kiddos in front of us and needs and abilities and tailor curriculum to this? You might have a student in a class who is English second language and a student who is fluent in English. And so what are the challenges that come along with being in a diverse district?
Yes, I think it is the personalization of learning, and that's not only to do with the diversity in language. So if you think about just our English learners, they come in at all different levels. Some have been in United States schools before, others may have interrupted education altogether. So we do have scholars that come to us in the middle grades and high school who have very interrupted education. So it really is about tailoring programs to meet them where they are. We have, as I mentioned, 22 languages, so you can't possibly have the number of teachers that would have that same language background as scholars, but we do have English learner teachers who understand how to teach those who are learning English as a second language. We have classrooms that are very diverse. You may have up to 50-60% of your class who may be English learners. There are a couple of our schools who are nearing 30% of their overall scholar population who are English learners. So we've actually just partnered with an organization called We Dare to Teach, and we have 4 new Swahili-speaking teachers that have joined our teaching staff this year so that we can further support a very large population of Swahili-speaking scholars at the high school, at Rock Island High School, and also at Rock Island Academy. But I think those are opportunities for us because we see it as not only serving those scholars with those language diversity, but also exposing other students to the possibilities of being a teacher who can teach in dual languages. So that, I think, is a model in our area, and we're needing to expand that even more as our English learner population grows.
Yeah, there is the language component. There is I guess one thing I'm curious about is just the quickly evolving nature of work in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had post-industrialization with the moving out of factories in our area. A lot of those jobs disappeared. Now they're talking about even AI might replace some jobs that are more white-collar jobs,
Mm-hmm.
where you're doing accounting or you're doing financial advising. Or how do you think about this population of scholars and say, okay, what are we preparing these kids to do in the future? And how
Mm-hmm.
does a big school district even keep up with the rapid pace of change?
Mm-hmm. Well, I recently went to a conference where a speaker who is very versed in artificial intelligence said, just stop trying to keep up because you won't be able to. However, there are some things that you can do to start preparing. We, in my position, can't even imagine what our scholars are going to need in 2 years, nonetheless 5 or 10 when they leave us to go to the workforce. So we have to be nimble, and I think that working with our partners in the area is very important. We did receive a computer science equity grant from the state that's going to help us think about our pathways for scholars around computer science and fields that are more technology based. But it's hard to keep up, as you mentioned. It's hard to be flexible because public schools especially are not as nimble perhaps as the industry needs us to be. So that's definitely something that we're going to be working over time, especially with our partners at Black Hawk College and some of the area workforce development to understand better what opportunities are available for scholars when they leave us, so that we can backward map and understand what they'll need in elementary, middle, and high school.
I love that approach. So you're reaching out to the employers and the educators at the next level.
Yes.
And saying, what do you see emerging as the roles you're going to need filled, as the job opportunities of the future, and then trying to work backwards to be more responsive to that, and recognizing that incorporating technology and has to be a part of that, and that, like you said, we can't even begin to imagine what are these kids' lives going to look like 10 years from now.
Yes. I think COVID and the pandemic kind of made our pace a little more rapid. And we had an opportunity that I think we could have taken a step further during that time because we were reactive. So, of course, all of our scholars have a laptop, a Chromebook, some kind of device that they're using. But I think that there's so much more we could be doing with technology with or without a Chromebook per se, just to prepare them for the next level. We still do have very solid career and technical education paths at our high school. We're working with our partners around that. In nursing and welding, kind of some typical career paths that are in high demand also, including teaching, which I want to stress is a new career pathway for us. And I think it's important for us to expose our scholars to as many things as possible, because as we were meeting this morning, we talked about my previous background in social work. I didn't know I was going to be a teacher and then an administrator until after my first degree. So it takes scholars time to figure out what they want to do. I think exposing them to a lot of different things also helps them find their path.
So kind of a broad base of hands-on learning or trying different things, learning about different areas and following where the interest takes them or following what captures their imagination. My daughter is a sophomore. She's going to be a sophomore at Rocky, and last year they had to write a paper about a challenge facing people her age.
Yes.
And she actually wrote about lack of motivation in school. She's a good student, but her kind of solution to that and the research she was doing was around this idea that I think you already said this word, specialization, that young people need or are craving or want some sort of integration of their own interests with the learning material.
Yes.
And being more responsive to that. And I know she really likes even some opportunities for like independent learning and how, you know, technology and AI, it's like teaching people how to think, how to ask questions, how to engage with, you know, AI hallucinates. It gives you the wrong answer and how to kind of suss out if what the technology is telling you is true, if you believe it or not. But yeah, I think there is probably so much cool stuff going on in education around that idea of exploring a lot of things, learning how to think, learning how to engage and ask questions and think about leadership and then that exposure to a lot of different things to see now what captures my interest and how do I carve out a path for myself there.
Yes. So at our, we're in the middle of a strategic planning process, and we had a panel of scholars for a couple of our sessions, and the one thing that rang out from them over and over again was personalization. I want my teacher to know me, what my interests are, what I want to do. And the classes and the teachers that they commented on most were those teachers that were really good in that area, were able to pick up on their needs and wants, the way they learned, and took that as the way to connect with them in school. So that is definitely on the mind of young people. And I think it's a good takeaway for us in our strategic planning process.
This is kind of a backtracking question, but in my mind, I'm just thinking like, what is the job of a superintendent? Because, you know, you have the facility stuff, you have the budget stuff, you have the education piece. What is your primary, like, you know, what do you go to bed and wake up thinking about related to education in your specific role as a superintendent?
It is all of that and more. So the state of Illinois and the Board of Education defines the role of a superintendent or likens it to the CEO of the organization. So, you know, we think about teaching and learning for sure. That is our number one thing that we think about quite a bit. But we also have to manage an organization that's the third largest employer in Rock Island. And some folks don't think about that. But it is, we're the third largest employer in Rock Island. So everything that comes with running an organization that has about 1,200 or so employees is a lot of my job every day. Just making sure that our budget is on track, that we are fiscally responsible in that area, that we're hiring good people to be in front of our scholars every day and to support our school system, but also the facilities. That keeps me up a lot, especially when it's poor weather, and just managing all of that. Again, likened to the CEO of an organization and everything that would come with that.
Wow. So yeah, you're in HR, you're in the teaching and learning, you're in the brick and mortar facility, you're in the budgeting and financial, and all of that is kind of on your plate to be the final one accountable or responsible for all these different areas within. Wow.
Yes.
That does not sound fun to me.
Well, it's fun most days if you think about the outcome that public education has for our community. I think that's really what I try to keep at the top of my mind, because I believe so very firmly in making sure that each of our scholars gets a quality education so that they will go out into the world, impact their local community, impact their state, impact our country, impact the world. So if I can keep that in front of my mind on those days where there may be a roof leak here or there, or something's happening that's kind of out of my control, then I can stay positive about it and move forward.
Yeah. Like I imagine a little Post-it note on your mirror, you know, when you get up in the morning, staying really committed to that core principle of what we're all doing here.
Yes.
And taking the issues that may be a little bit out of control or feel really, with budgeting and stuff, might feel impossible to address in a way that makes everything right for everyone. Those are really difficult challenges.
Yes. And thinking about, your last comment, just the equity issue within public schools as well is really top of mind for me a lot, because we know our community is diverse, and there are some scholars that come to school very privileged and have a good background in terms of home education or being able to be in a stable place to come to school. And then there are scholars who may come with some challenges that we need to address in school so that they can be their best at school and learn. So that's really at the top of my mind a lot as well in this community, but in others that I've worked in as well. Public education can be that place where we can kind of bring all folks up to a certain level so that our communities can be better.
Yeah. And so when we think about equity, just for people who might be wondering, like, what is the definition of that versus equality or, so when you think about equity, what does equity mean?
To me, it means that the experience that our scholars have every day in every classroom is meeting their individual needs. So we talked a little bit about the diversity of the district and students coming to school showing up in different ways, basically. And I think it's our job to understand what those needs are so that they can access the curriculum, access their learning in a very equitable way or the same level. So that's what it means to me, looking at each individual child, not just as a number. You're an English learner, you're a child who has a background of some level of poverty or mental health issue, and finding the resources for those scholars to make sure that they can be educated at the same level as other scholars who are coming differently to the classroom.
So you might have within a classroom a kiddo who's coming, they've had food, they had a bath the night before, they have safe housing, they feel generally safe in their home with the people that are living with them. They have books in their house. They learned how to read when they were maybe 7 or had people reading to them regularly. And they show up at school pretty ready to learn and engage. And their classmate in the same classroom might be really coming from a situation where maybe there's some hunger going on. Maybe parents are working a lot, or there's someone with a disability and they're not they don't have books in the home, or they're not reading as much, and so to achieve equity, you've got those two kids in the class. How does a district do that? Is it the teacher in the classroom kind of noticing what's going on with the two kids and identifying, we're both social workers, but so like an ACEs score, which is adverse childhood events or experiences, which anybody can look up. You can find your own ACEs score, but it's a list of things that if you experience, you are more likely to have, more challenging health outcomes. And it's stuff like witnessing domestic violence, or having a parent who's incarcerated, or so anyone can go find their ACEs score. But when you're in the district and you've got two kiddos in a class and you're looking for equity, how do you do that? Is it the teacher recognizing, okay, this kid has an ACEs score of 2 and this one has an ACEs score of 8, and so I'm going to engage something around food security for this child, or is that another person in the school building that's just like a very hard job.
It is.
A worthy job, an important job, but
yes, it is very complex. As you can imagine, our class sizes range from 20 to almost 30 in some cases. And all of what you just mentioned about the way scholars show up to school is what happens every day for teachers. But it's not just up to the teacher. That's where it starts for sure. But every level of the organization has some responsibility to make sure that equity happens. So for those scholars, and I'll take a high performing scholar who comes to school ready. We have the same responsibility to that scholar to push them to their highest level as we do someone who's coming in who perhaps hasn't had access to language before. So we have to think about the gifted scholar, the advanced scholar, and how we're going to push them up to their highest level, but also to those scholars who need more support in that area. And I'm very thankful that we have school counselors in all of our schools. That's another layer of support for teachers and for principals. We also have social workers in our schools that can serve children. On the higher end, we have gifted education and advanced academics, and that's an area that we need to work on, I think, some in our district. But it's really the teacher is the first person, the paraprofessional also who's in the in many of our classrooms, school principals, those school social workers, school counselors, and then at a strategic level, folks that work in the central office and support principals and support schools really have to be acutely aware of any equity issues, any systems that we've set up perhaps that are causing the unintended consequence of being inequitable, and really at the highest level, at the superintendent level, taking all of that information and looking broadly at the organization to see where there are discrepancies in how we're serving scholars, and then getting the resources together and the people together to be able to make sure that we have equitable resources in our schools.
Yeah, I would anticipate that a challenge of that is you are always refining these processes to enhance that, and then you create a rule, and then that rule needs to be adjusted for an individual. It's how to both be structured but responsive enough to have, I've had folks in here on this podcast just talking about, like an individual who might be caring for a disabled parent, and they come to school showing up in a certain way with their stressors, and there's a rule. There's a strict rule there, and this kid is kind of struggling to meet that rule, and walking that fine line between we're having this standard, and now we see a kid who needs grace.
Yes.
And I don't know. I think this would be a really hard job.
And teachers are better now at recognizing those events that may happen to scholars, and like I said, we do have supportive social workers and counselors who are specialized in that area and can really help support teachers through that. It's definitely something that we have addressed in our school system, but I think we can all learn better. We just I just met with new teachers this morning, and it's one thing to sit in your classroom and learn about methods of teaching scholars, but when 25 unique individuals come to your classroom for that first time, it's a big thing for teachers to understand, to be able to personalize and to know how to interact with 25 individuals in their classroom.
I've volunteered a couple times, and every time I volunteer, I go home so exhausted.
Yes.
And just in awe of teachers that you can be on all day, no time to take a little private break in your own head, like just the level of presence and kind of monitoring everything that's going on. And because there are these other challenges in our district around food security, and they're not only worrying about teaching and learning, they are also worried about, is this kid fed? Is this kid psychologically well? So that's, gosh, they deserve a raise, but there's probably no money in the budget for it. So
they do, and we work with our collective bargaining partners to make sure that we have a very well compensated staff. I think that's important, and we really work to make sure that our employees are well taken care of in that area.
Anything coming from outside the district, moving to this new city, bringing your education and your experience, and there must be things that you kind of have your own vision and clarity mission about. What is it like to come into this large system and maybe want to shake things up a little bit, or chart a path that might have a different emphasis or focus. Maybe that's too personal of a question, but like, how are you doing and how has that been for you?
No, I think it's, I've really taken a learning stance. That first year I wrote a learning plan instead of an entry plan because I really felt it was important for me to be more of a listener than to start putting programs in place. And that, I think that served me very well. Of course, there were lots of decisions that I had to make just because of the position I'm in, but there were other things that I was able to take time to speak with people about and get a feel for the level of comfortability in moving things around and getting people's input, getting a lot of input around where we should go academically, et cetera. And this year, in my first year, the Board of Education asked me to lead our facilities management planning process. And throughout that whole process, we tried to seek as much input as we could from everyone in the community, our scholars, our teachers, staff members, families, community members. We had a committee. And I think it's just really important to sit down with people, make sure you're hearing what is happening, what their perception of the district is, what their needs are, kind of the history. That's been very important for me to understand the history of the schools, the history of the city, to get to know that better before we do large-scale changes. The district did have some flux and void in leadership before I came, so I knew that it was important for me to get to know what was happening before large-scale changes happen.
Are there a few points of, if you had to think about your wins this past year going into your second school year, things that you're really proud of or feel really positively about that have happened in the last year that are just generally going on in the district?
I think I mentioned the facilities management plan that loomed large with our Board of Education and many community members. I mentioned the historic nature of our city, and many of our schools are almost at the end of their useful life. The average age of our schools is about 70-something years, and so that was a very big looming project that the Board of Education felt very strongly that we needed to accomplish last year. So I'm very proud that we were able to get input from everyone to put together a short and long-term facilities management plan. Our board supported the issuance of $55 million in bonds, which has helped us kickstart that plan. I think that is very important because the equity issue starts with our buildings and how scholars and teachers are experiencing the place that they spend upward of 8 hours a day in. And that's extremely important for us to have those health and safe learning environments for our scholars.
Were there any main priorities that came out of that, specific issues, or that were kind of the top one or two on everyone's wish list, or,
Yeah. After we had an architect that helped us look at the physical plant of each of our buildings, so we did an assessment of that. We also looked at the usability, how are scholars and teachers using the buildings, and set a standard for that. And a lot of the feedback was around, one, just making sure we're safe, making sure we have accessibility for scholars and people with disabilities to get into our schools, but also music and art, things that really personalize, bring some life to schools, was a priority for folks. So we've started working on some of that over the summer, but planning out for the future is important to make sure that we can bring all of our schools up to the level we know they can be.
Everything sounds like triage, kind of, when
Yes.
you're assessing any of these issues. So what do we need for safety? So maybe remediating mold or
Yes.
fixing something that's broken, and then moving on to the like a triangle with the most important things up at the top, and but having that strategic plan, having it written down, and
Yes.
kind of a roadmap to follow, so that as you're considering things, you can think about, where does this fit in with our overall, what we said we wanted to do with the vision. Feels more planful for the community than than a random idea. Oh, should we do this? Yes, that's a great idea. Let's do it. But it didn't fit into that strategic plan.
Yes, that plan is very important. And as I mentioned, it's a short and long term. We also conducted a demography study within that planning process so that we could understand where scholars are moving within the school district, which schools may be over or underpopulated, so that we can consider when we're implementing plans to change or improve schools, we know where the scholar population is. So that was an important part of that plan as well. But having that plan, like you mentioned, is a roadmap for us. And I think it's going to, although it's kind of a living document because things do happen and we need to triage those things, but at least we have a starting point, a good guide to start the planning process for projects long term.
Yeah. Is there something similar to a facilities plan for the academic part? Like, when people are looking at where do I want to live and where am I going to settle in with my children, they always look at these school report cards, and everybody gets different scores. And when we think about the District of Rock Island in terms of improving those scores, or I don't even know if those scores are accurate, if I believe in them, because there's really no incentive for kids to like do well on those tests. They don't matter for anything. They don't, but what are the really critical areas? Is it making sure every second grader where do you get the most bang for your buck in terms of focusing that triage, like we talked about with facilities in the education realm?
Well, I think it starts at the teacher and scholar level for sure. Our principals who are building their plan for their school, looking at all available sources of data. You mentioned the state report card, and that's, sometimes the first place folks look when they're moving into a community. It was one of the first places I looked as a person looking to work in the school district. And as you mentioned, a snapshot in time, it is kind of a one-shot picture of how the district is doing. We are sunsetting our previous strategic plan, which was written in 2020, and really seeking input from our community around what matters in the four walls of the school building. So academics, culture and climate of our schools, important things like attendance and how to get families involved in schools. So the strategic plan really will be our North Star for those academic measures that we have in our school district. For sure, there are some key grades that we pay particular attention to make sure our scholars are on track. And within the strategic planning process, we'll also build kind of a profile of a graduate. So what are the qualities we would like to see from every graduate in the Rock Island Milan School District?
And is that already fleshed out, or that's part of that process, is kind of reworking what that definition is of a graduate?
We're in the middle of the process now. So the next couple of days will be in our design days. So we've had community input through surveys, through focus groups. We had 2 summits this spring to gather some input and feedback from community members. And now we're taking all of that information and bringing a group together, about 60 or 70 individuals, to start fleshing out what those most important goals are going to be for the school district. So we're still in the middle of that and forming that plan, and we're hopeful in the next month or so we'll be finishing up that plan.
Wow. So I want to just cover my face because I don't think I've been to any of the meetings, but I do see
That's
some
okay.
of the
You're invited. There's still
yes.
time. There's still time.
Yeah. And, it can be hard for parents to get engaged and to show up. And I think we just say, here, you take my kids and, do a good job with them, and I'll pick them up at the end of the day.
That's engagement too.
Is it hard to get parents to be involved?
It is, and I think that we have to be flexible because many parents have different work hours, different language capability. That's been something that I've tried to encourage us to do better at in terms of inviting in language diversity and having interpreters there for meetings, having meetings at different times of the day, having meetings online and in person so that we can kind of accommodate different family workloads and schedules, etc. It is difficult, and because we know as working people, it would be difficult for us to go volunteer to be in a meeting or to do something extra. So we try to make it as easy as possible, and I don't say this, poo-poo any kind of engagement, because picking up your child from school is a part of engagement. Being able to, talk to a teacher occasionally when you can is engagement. I think that any way a parent or a family can connect with the school will take it. And there's always families who are engaged in everything that we ask of them. So there's a balance there.
I get the sense that because of the unique maybe challenges Rock Island schools face, that community wraparound is extra important. So as you're looking at, as a teacher in a classroom with a student, identifying an issue, maybe informing the principal about it, maybe it goes to a social worker, but then really having those wraparound services from the community to say, perhaps the school can't address all this, but here we have a mobile dental clinic, we have family resources, we have some sort of summertime program that kids can be engaged in, that our community wraparound for the Rock Island Milan School District is probably really important.
Absolutely. And we have a team, our student services team, that works hard to make those connections for families. Our school social workers, I can't talk enough about our school counselors and social workers, really reach into those tentacles of community-based organizations as well to bring in support for our scholars. So it truly is a community effort to make sure that our scholars are successful.
I imagine one thing you might be learning as you go through school, I think my kids are learning this, is that it's important to care about the well-being of the people around you. That your society is better when everyone in your society has freedom and access to clean water and food, and that it's not, I don't know what the right term is, but to walk away from that and say, well, I can kind of put myself over here where I don't really need to think about that or worry about that. That translates into then what kind of an adult does that person become, and what is their view on, where should I live and who should I live among? And I don't know if that translates, do you think? Because we're teaching our kids how to do jobs of the future, but we might also be teaching them how to be citizens of the future and to not leave their neighbors behind if they do achieve at a level where they have, they could, they could, but does that, I'm rambling.
That's okay. I can pick up on your ramble.
Yeah.
So we actually, what I thought about is the citizenship and a new silver cord program at Rock Island High School, where we're honoring scholars who go above and beyond their volunteerism as a high schooler. And I think that's a good example of how we can boost our scholars' understanding of their community and how they can be helpful to their community and some of the needs of the community. So that's an example that I can think of, that a teacher just started this silver cord program, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name right now.
Oh gosh, it's in my head.
Yes.
It's Duncan or something with a D, but I can't remember right now.
Yes, so very proud we honored our first scholars who received that silver cord at our last graduation in May. So that's one way. I did have a scholar advisory group, middle schoolers and high schoolers, junior highs and high schoolers, and they talked a lot about others, and I thought that was a good sign for me as a superintendent, that they weren't just thinking about themselves, but they were thinking about their classmates who weren't represented in the advisory. And I asked them, bring others, someone who doesn't look like you, or you haven't had an experience with. And I'm really excited to get started with the scholars here when schools school comes back, because I think that's an important, very important part of our education.
Yeah. And our new mayor is a Rock Island alum. We went to
Yes.
high school together, so he was the first guest on the podcast. But, I can remember in high school, he was a leader of people, just a person who easily connected with others, who people really liked, and those types of, like, preparing kids for the future, just being a leader who's concerned about others. And there's maybe not a curriculum for that, but these opportunities to get scholars together to talk about opportunities, even just in leadership, like, we want a new vending machine. How do you organize for that?
Yes.
How do you come up with a ask of the school? Those are such powerful skills that you say scholars. I love that termination. I keep wanting to say kids, but
yes.
Yeah.
Definitely that really came out in our advisories this year, and with just a little bit of prompting, but not a lot. They really talked about others and how they wanted to improve their schools. And, if you invite feedback from young people, they were very willing to share.
Do they do any, I think it would be so interesting to present a community issue to the school once a year and have a club. I'd volunteer, to say, okay, school, you come up almost like you're the city council or you're the leaders in the community. You do some independent research or try to come up with a solution to this community problem, whether that's around, like last night at the city council meeting, they talked about a moratorium on homeless shelters and housing places, and the city wants to do a strategic plan so they could take an issue, a really challenging issue like homelessness, and come up with ideas for how would you create policies. Okay, like you set that policy up, what's the unintended consequence of that? What is there anything like that currently at the high school?
Well, when you said that, I thought about our entrepreneur program, and then I don't know if this is a term and out, but sociopreneur.
Oh, yeah.
So someone who takes a social issue, a community issue, and comes up with solutions to it, just like an entrepreneur would for a business
that was
program
actually
or plan.
A class in my master's program, social entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So something like that. It doesn't quite exist, to my knowledge, in our schools, but I think that's definitely an interesting concept, and one that I think many of our scholar and teachers would embrace.
Yeah. Just these are the people who are going to be solving the problems when I am older.
Yes.
And so preparing them for all these different jobs, but including that little chunk of, being involved in their society, being civically engaged, all that stuff. Can kids register to vote at high school when they're seniors?
Yes. As long as you're 18, we do have organizations that come in to help our young people register to vote.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask you a couple questions that, not that they're more challenging, but maybe more negative.
That's okay.
And so we can talk about them, and if you even were like, oh, cut that out, we can. But I'm just wondering, so I've heard feedback from an old neighbor that used to live near me, or a neighbor who sends their kids to Catholic school, or just kind of saying, like, I would never send my kids to Rocky. Kind of wanting to check in with you about, are these real concerns? Are they myths? There's too much fighting at Rocky. They let the kids get away with everything. There's not enough discipline. These are not my experiences having a child in the district, but are those, there's so much positive going on. But when you think about the feedback the school gets on the other side of, like, here are the top 3 issues, or these are the negative things, what would you say kind of
rises to the
top?
Yeah,
they're not my experience, but maybe exploring that a little bit would be helpful for listeners.
Yes. Well, I want to acknowledge that there are no schools that don't experience some type of conflict, especially with teenagers, preteens, etc. It's a difficult age to navigate. We have a very large, comprehensive high school that is very complex. It's an organization that is hard to manage. I will say that our scholars have brought up issues, and especially in our high school, around some fighting, some disagreements. We have a community-wide issue with vaping and using tobacco and other substances. I was very proud of our scholars for being very open and honest about concerns of theirs around those at school. So I don't ever shy away from saying that these things that happen in school are also happening in our community. So it can be a community solution to that as well. I will say that we are working toward a better way to help our scholars manage their emotions in school. And we are very fortunate this year to bring on an interventionist at the high school. It was a position that existed in the district years ago but was discontinued for whatever reason. And it really is going to, I think, help manage, like I mentioned, helping to teach scholars to better work with their peers in school so that we can eliminate or greatly reduce the conflicts, especially conflicts that have to do with any physical conflict in school. So I recognize that it's comprehensive high school, that we will have issues of that sort, but we're certainly aware of them and making plans to make sure that it is that everyone feels safe at school.
Are most of the fights about romance, or someone just said something taunting someone in the hallway, or are there any themes to the conflict?
There are themes that continue from the community in. So there may have been a conflict over the weekend, overnight, about something, and because we don't have the coping skills as young adults to work through those issues in a different way than choosing a physical altercation, then it may lead to that. I can't say it's one thing because it is all of that. It could be, just growing up as a young person, trying to get yourself straight in this world with your friends and other conflicts like that.
And there might be social media involved where people are fighting over some sort of an electronic format. They're not talking. They're not communicating face to face. They're not finding
There's definitely that aspect of it. And I think in my time in public education, that has become more and more of an issue because altercations, verbal altercations, start on social media a lot of times and follow into the school. And because of that impersonal nature of social media, meeting face to face to then discuss it often becomes a more dangerous type of situation than just we're online sparring.
Does the interventionist help two kids get together in the same room and mediate their conflict?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're training the therapists of tomorrow.
Yes, yes, and our school counselors and social workers again also have that role. This is just one person at the high school, but I can envision that that person and that role will be key to making sure, kind of nipping things in the bud, really teaching some skills to scholars so that it doesn't escalate to those in that way.
Yeah, so I hear you saying that, there is conflict. There are fights. I fought. I didn't physically fight. I actually had a couple people who wanted to fight me at Rocky, but I was always like, hey, I want to be your friend. That was my coping strategy, was to almost acquiesce. And that was the route that I took, but I think other kids show up with this other part that's like, I need to defend myself. I need to fight for who I am. And so I hear you saying that, yes, these things do happen at the school, and the school is committed to multiple paths to address that, to reduce fights. Obviously, the school isn't just like, well, everyone's fighting, we don't care,
Exactly.
But sometimes the myth from the outside is that it's like an out-of-control situation, and I think, that's not what my daughter says. That's not been our experience of it. So how do you combat that is it like, okay, well, if you're going to tell me that it's not safe there, bring me a specific example and let's really look at that example? Or how does Rocky kind of push back against that narrative? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a difficult one if you're not there every day. And I have spent a lot of time at Rocky, just getting to know teachers, the administration, etc. I never felt that it was a place that wasn't trying to get better. And our scholars are some of the best that I've worked with in my time in education. Very respectful young people. There are some structures at our school that need to be tightened up, and I think that is part of our work this year, just making sure that scholars are engaged in their classrooms so that they feel like they want to go to class, because a lot of things happen when scholars aren't supervised and they make choices sometimes not to be in their class. So processes like that I think are important for us to tighten up this year, and we will be. We have a new principal that I have very good confidence in, who will be able to set up some of those structures and systems so that scholars have a better experience and feel safe in school. That's the ultimate goal for all of our scholars, to be that feel like they can go to school, learn, and be safe.
Yeah. And it's almost like you need the kids that are having that conflict to be part of the steering committee to make the system better, to be almost engaged in why is this going on? What are the solutions? What are the,
Yes.
Because any problem is also kind of ground for development or ground for digging into to kind of create something there.
Yes. And we have adults at our high school who are very attuned to scholars who might be having those kinds of days where they need to have a relationship, be able to go to someone to talk to kind of get back on track, etc. And I think that will go a long way as well, just developing those relationships one-on-one with scholars so that they can have someone in a very big place. Rocky is a very big place, about 1,700 scholars or so. So, children can get lost in that sometimes.
Having somebody that you feel connects with you and cares about you, and how important
it's going to check
that
on
is.
you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that probably helps with engagement, showing up, but that's a big
Absolutely.
task.
Yes.
Wow. What are your thoughts on banning phones in school?
That's another complex question, and I don't have a firm answer, but what I know is that we're learning more about the impact that an electronic device has on the psyche, mental health needs of young people. We just ended a community book club on the anxious generation. I've been wanting to read it, so I just said, why don't I read it with someone else who might be interested in seeking solutions to that, and just learned a lot about how the ubiquitousness, is that a word?
I think so.
Of cell phones and electronic devices is having on our society, and especially on young people and their mental health. And I think it's a good discussion starter for our school district. Our school board is also very interested in knowing what we can do to limit the use of cell phones. I think teachers are very much heightened awareness of how much distraction our scholars have in schools. So we're starting the conversation. I think that we have a policy where they should be off and away, and it's just making sure everybody's level set on what our expectations are around that and starting the conversation on it.
Yeah, I read that book. I thought it was so good, and the things that came out of it to me were that kind of were really interesting to me. Was if you ask any teenager, do you want to not have your cell phone, they'll say no. But if you say, well, if all the kids didn't have their cell phones, if it was kind of this united situation where no kids had their cell phones, a lot of kids will say, yeah, take it away.
Yes.
And it kind of makes me think of when my kids go to camp. and they can't have
they don't
phones,
have access.
that they feel really good and it's not stressful to them. And when they come back and then they get back on their phones, they almost feel this grief for how much simpler and how much more connected they were. So even if you're at the lunch table and you're on your phone, you're not learning to chat it up with a friend. It's almost like this safety blanket for anxiety too. Like if I feel uncomfortable, I can look on my phone. If I don't know what to do in this situation, I'll look on my phone. So I'm definitely in favor of it, like putting them in little cubbies. But I think if it's just off and away, my concern is that then the teachers have to spend so much time trying to enforce, he's got his phone out again.
And they do. Yes.
And then all the class becomes about watching phones. Whereas if you just put them in a third location, that becomes, I mean, that's just my opinion.
Yes.
And I didn't join the book club, so.
That's okay. Our teachers have different strategies to deal with it. But like I said, we have procedures and policies in place. It really is about making sure that everybody has the same expectations for scholars when they're in the classroom. And like I said, I think it is a big management thing for teachers and principals to deal with. And we are going to have the conversation very soon to make a decision. Our state government is also thinking about taking a stance on that as well. So I think it's going to be very soon that we'll have some guidance, further guidance on that, and provide guidance for our schools.
What about in light of some of the federal immigration policy? I just had Isaac Carr on from QCR last week. Does Rocky have to be doing anything special or thinking about anything special in terms of immigration and ICE? And, you know, is that something that the school district is having to deal with?
It was definitely something that we had to discuss and provide, make sure that we had a plan for. When the new federal administration came into office, we, like many school districts in the area and the state, really took a look at our procedure for allowing anyone on school property. And so our school leaders, we worked with our legal team, we worked with our state partners to make sure that we had tight procedures, that our principals and front office staff knew what to do in the case that someone came to our school system to request information. And the state law is very clear about gaining information about a scholar. It's not our place to release personal information about any of our scholars to folks that don't have a very specific reason to have that information. So it was pulling those resources and policies that we already had and just bringing top of mind to the people who would be basically on the front line of working with anyone who asks for that kind of information. And we just all have a heightened awareness about it now and just very careful.
So you were on it already. You've been on the issue. And has anyone come to the school? Have you had any issues with anything like that?
We have not had any issues, thankfully. And we're hoping that that will be the case in the new school year. But like with any new beginning, we always re-up our understanding of what our role is in all of this, and we just stay very hyper alert.
Yeah. As parents who are listening or people in the community, you know, because one of the biggest attractions for a community, for economic development, for increasing our population is the school district. So you're kind of in charge of the best kind of advertising we have to bring people to our community, but you can't do that job by yourself. And the teachers and the school professionals, they cannot do that job by themselves. What would you say are some of the most important things that parents, grandparents, you know, community people can do to support the school in being successful?
I think it's just being aware of what their scholar is doing every day. I think just bringing it home to your family, your scholar, and supporting them in what they're doing. Even if you can't do their 11th grade math problem. I know.
I cannot do any.
Me either. But I can ask them about them. I can support them with it. I can give them a place to do their homework, to have a space that's probably phone free, to have a little time to read and practice. But I also think it's important for us to have well-rounded children, and so having plenty of fun in the summer, having plenty of downtime when they come home from school, because school can be quite rigorous. If you think about especially our high schoolers going from to 8 classes a day, only having very little time, and they mentioned this in the Anxious Generation as well, that downtime for a certain age of scholar is kind of non-existent these days, and just having them just be a child for a while. So I think that's important too. Making sure they're at school, I think, is an important topic for me to address as well. Our chronic absenteeism is starting to bounce back from the pandemic, but we still have a ways to go. And just being at school every day, being present. If you're a family who can't make it to school all the time, choose 2 or 3 activities that you could do. Drop a note to a teacher. They're very appreciative when families, see them and appreciate them as well.
Communicate what's going on in the home, why this is happening, or
Absolutely.
what the challenges are. And that might invite in some support too.
Mm-hmm. It's important for us to know how to contact you, families. So that, that's always sometimes a moving target for some families, but it's important for safety's sake. It's important for you to know what's happening at your child's school, important dates and things like that. So I think just staying connected in some way to the school is important.
I also think out of that book, or maybe I'm confusing 2 books, but giving your kids responsibility, having them do things that might be a little out of their comfort zones, like, walking to a mailbox, mailing a letter, walking back, being able to ride their bikes with friends. I think we're more afraid than we've ever been, and the data would say that our neighborhoods and communities are safer than they've ever been. Generally, Rock Island is a safe place, and that's not the public perception, but it is.
Yes.
And so allowing kids to go out in the summer and wander around. We keep our kids in this much tighter square radius of our home, but that actually undermines their sense of ability and autonomy and makes them feel a little incapable and immature.
Yes.
Like I can't do things for myself. And I think that is also on parents to say, no, you could walk to the gas station and I struggle with that, but last year, one of my kids was kind of sick. We kept her home, and I had to work. So I said, Nora, you're going to be home alone for a few hours because I am busy. And I had to turn my phone off because I was in sessions. And I come out of my session to all these pictures of her. She went to the library. She checked out a book. She walked to the Walgreens, which was across a big intersection, got herself some snacks, walked all the way home. I probably would have told her, you can't do that. But she was very capable, and I was horrified. I was
I think they coined that was safetyism in the Anxious Generation, that we've taken away some of that playtime, free play, from children, and that's holding them back from that decision making and kind of natural consequences that happen when you're doing when you're in that mode. And
even the conflict resolution, you're in a court and you're playing a game and you have to work out, the rules of the game. And as parents, we probably get too involved. I'm doing some work at Century Woods, and there's, meeting with a lot of tenants, and a lot of the actually arguing among the adults is related to arguments among the children, and the adults feeling like
I have to solve it for them.
I have to solve the issues for my kids. I have to, and sometimes you do. I mean, kids do need support when there are big issues going on, but I think we're just in that generation of not allowing our kids the dignity of working it out and figuring it out.
Yes. Sometimes we're too much in a hurry to go on to something else to allow them the time to do that.
Yeah. And that these conflicts, given the tools and a space with an interventionist or maybe these kids are capable of coming up with some solutions and forging some paths forward. And so I love the book club. What are you going to do it again?
I am. I don't know the title yet, but certainly we had a pretty good turnout for the clubs. We held them at each of the branches of the Rock Island Library. We also had a teacher who was thinking about the same thing at the same time, so I just partnered with her, and we held three meetings over the summer to talk about the book.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I will stay posted. And do you feel like the best way for parents to know what's going on is the district website? Is it Facebook? Is it, if you really want to be keyed into what's going on in the district, where's the best place for people to go for information?
Right now, I would say the website, and we do have an app that you can subscribe to on the website.
Is that Remind?
It is not Remind. That is our two-way communication system. We're actually converting that from Remind to the app that the new website vendor uses called Rooms. But we're getting training on that now. It's not quite ready. But there is an app that you can download on your phone that will have a news feed on it. It will have the district calendar on it as well, which people have found very helpful. Your school, each of the schools has their own web site. So we're going to be making sure that those are up to date. But the website probably in the app right now. We do have social media, and that is another way to find out information. Once school starts, for sure, our principals are ramping up their weekly newsletters and other communication tools that they use as well.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to tell us or you think is important to highlight about your role in the community or
Well, I'm just happy to be here. I'm settling in after a year, so I've kind of gotten the rhythm of the climate and the events that go on in Rock Island. Very excited about the future for our schools. As I mentioned, we have the strategic planning process going on right now, and I think that is really going to be a catalyst for our schools. It can really get everybody in the community on one page about where we're going. And just excited to get school started here next week.
Yep, we go back Tuesday.
Yes.
Yeah, were you on year-round before?
I have been in a modified year-round in another school district, but this is the first time I've been in a full year.
Yeah, I love it. I actually really like it. I think it provides these little breaks, but the summer isn't so long. For working parents, I think it makes it much more manageable than the really long summer.
Yes.
So I'm really grateful to be in a year-round situation.
Yeah, the breaks are nice. I've enjoyed them personally. It does help with kind of breaking up the school year, and we get tired, and those breaks really give teachers and scholars and families a chance to breathe and then come back refreshed.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, my husband and I, in large part, live in Rock Island because of our experiences at Rock Island High School, and the Rock Island School District has been a really awesome place for our 4 kids, and so we're big supporters of, the Rock Island schools.
That's
and
great to hear.
Just wanting more people to kind of understand and know that, the quality of a school and of an education and how kind of rich that can be is hard to capture on a school report card.
Yes. I'd say come visit us.
Yes.
This is your open invitation to come visit a Rock Island Milan school. Our principals will welcome you, and I think that you will be very pleased with the educational outcome that can happen in our schools.
Yeah. And I do have kids that are, I guess you'd say they're high achieving, or they get on the tests and stuff, they do pretty well. And I think the school does do a good job of challenging them and finding opportunities to challenge them and kind of, but I also think they get real opportunities to be leaders. And, I can think of my one who's going into 3rd grade last year in her school. She was buddied up with some friends and often in a role of helping them, which deepened her learning, but also gave her a lot of feelings of self-worth and of being a part of something. And not only was she there doing her stuff and learning, but she was also kind of engaged with her peers in ways that like deepened those relationships. And so I just encourage people to think about all areas of education, and as an adult, like what makes you happy, what gives your life purpose and meaning. And often it's not just a job that you have or a paycheck that you get. It's community, it's connection, you know, it's being a part of something bigger than yourself. And I think the Rock Island schools offer young people that opportunity.
Yes, I appreciate hearing that from a family who values education in Rock Island, Milan. I really do. And I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot from people. You know, we do have our challenges, and I'm ready. I will never shy away from those. But I also hear very positive things from our families, and they really appreciate our teachers and staff for the work they do every day.
It's so fun to meet you and get to talk to you a little bit,
well.
and I look forward to where the district is going. And, you know, there's a lot of people cheering you on, and we should all get more involved.
Well, thank you. Absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate the time today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, we did it.
Yay.
I can't thank Dr. Williams enough for joining me today on the podcast. Today was actually the first day of school, the day that this is released for the public schools in Rock Island. So if you listened on your first day without your kids home, yay, they're back in school. Stay tuned. Next week, I'm talking to Atticus Garrison from Blackhawk Library, who's also a resident of Rock Island. So that should be a great conversation. Head over to rockislandline.com to learn more about all the things we're doing here, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.